So today we are going to be talking with Sara Wiseman. She is an author, spiritual teacher, and an intuitive who has taught thousands of students to create a direct connection to the divine through her many books, courses, radio shows, podcasts, and private sessions. And she also writes regularly for Daily Om. And her website is sarawiseman.com, and her name, Sara, is spelled S-A-R-A. And today we're going to be speaking about her new book, Living a Life of Gratitude, Your Journey to Grace, Joy, and Healing. And if we have time, we may also talk about, she's doing this thing about the 6 traps of overabundance for the holidays. So if we have time, we'll touch on that as well. Welcome to the show, Sara.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm just really excited to be here today.
Thank you for being with me. And so I just received your book a couple of weeks ago, and I'm about halfway through, and I'm really enjoying it because you can just the chapters are 2 or 3 pages long, and after every chapter there's a little exercise in gratitude. Can you tell us how you got started with this book?
Yeah, this is my 6th book, and in the past I've written more a teaching style. Like I teach a lot what I call spiritual intuition, so I teach intuitive process and sort of this, step 1, do this, and then step 2, do that, and so this book was the first time I really sort of returned to my storytelling, or it's not quite fiction, but I used a lot of literary devices in this book. So it was really interesting to write it, a whole different style, whole way of doing it. And kind of what I did is took a life, birth to death, and broke it into like the regular passages lots of people might experience, and then just went in and explored sort of little moments of flavor, either my own that I'd had or what I'd heard about from someone else, trying to create this sort of mosaic of what a life might look at, and then asking the reader to look at their own life in these exercises and kind of take a look at what was going on for them.
Thank you, Sara. Well, I'm getting to the point in the book where you've just talked about finding your beloved and your soulmate and all of that. But prior to that, like you said, it's sort of a lifetime. And so it starts with birth, and then your mother and your father, and starting to see yourself as an individual. And it goes through those life stages. And a lot of those exercises ask you to sit and look back on these times that were moments of awareness or moments of happiness, and be grateful for that. And I can see the value in that. And my question, though, is as I'm reading the book, I had such a traumatic childhood that trying to look back on that it's very difficult. Even just trying to remember. I mean, there were happy times, but trying to remember them is challenging for me. So I'm just wondering, if you have a reader who's gone through that, are there any ways that they can still tap into that gratitude without bringing up a bunch of crap?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways, and I'm really aware of people having difficult pasts and people having great amounts of pain and struggle that they have to overcome. I did a workshop actually this past weekend in Portland, Oregon, and we did this thing where we went into meditation. We were doing a workshop on the book. And then we went into sort of, maybe say we went into a period of time in childhood, say age 10. And we sort of asked the universe to provide, we requested that the little slice of memory or time that we would receive would be pleasant versus, some of these bigger markers of rotten things or very painful things that happened. And so you can work with the universe, the divine, whatever name you give it, and just say, show me the thing that I've forgotten that's still there that was, beautiful or amazing. Just show me that one today. That's the one I want to look at. And that seems to be really effective because sometimes we have these big markers that we kind of return to the memory over and over and over again about that particular event. But maybe, the day before that event, we might have had something really fantastic happen. And it's sort of like we're going back into that lost memory, or that good memory that we kind of retrieve a new way.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Sara.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that you can give us a little snippet of the book. So just so people get an idea of what it feels like to read this book, can you read a bit of Living a Life of Gratitude?
Yeah, I'll read one of the stories, and I think I'll just think. Okay, here's one that I have been thinking about a lot, which I really like. A lot of the book just talks about, kind of being in present moment, and how that reveals just amazing bliss, just kind of sensing where you are, like right now at this very second while the radio show is going on. And so here's one that it's called Heaven's Ledger, and I just thought it was an interesting way of looking at things. Okay, so what if everything you might consider as your life's purpose was nothing? What if all your accomplishments, when you arrive for your reckoning in heaven, nirvana, beyond the veil, wherever you believe you are going, what if these were taken out, examined, and found to be nothing, no longer shiny and bright, but drab and shabby, as if collected and carted in an old grocery bag? What if they were looked at, all your pretty things, and then discarded to float away on the breeze, the bright white tail of one particularly favorite accomplishment sent flapping, pale and gentle as a kite rising, everything taken out and looked at and discarded, until when you reached the bottom of your bag, there was nothing left. Nothing. Nothing counted enough to be considered your finest accomplishment. Nothing counted enough to be considered your finest achievement. Your whole illustrious, successful, important, rewarded life was determined awash. Nothing counted. You arrived with nothing, and still they let you in. There may or may not be a pearly gate to heaven guarded by St. Peter. There may or may not be a time of reckoning with points tallied up, sins examined under a celestial microscope. It is your choice to believe in this version of the afterlife or not. For really, what does anyone know? Few have crossed the line and returned to tell. And what they do tell of white tunnels, bright light, and angels doesn't seem to include the ledger in the clouds for naughty and nice. When you lift off from the idea of right or wrong, good or bad, take punitive moralistic views out of the equation and focus instead on heart's opening into compassion, connection, love, this becomes the true measure of our lives. Not what job we had, but how much we cared for others. Not how much money we made, but how much we loved. Not how many trips we took, but how much we enjoyed. And then the exercise here, which people can kind of think about now, is if you were to look at your life outside of the usual bucket list of achievements and experiences, how does your life measure? How much has your heart opened thus far? How much more would you like it to open into gratitude for what you have experienced thus far? Start today. Simply ask for this opening into thanks.
Thank you, Sara.
It's funny. Some of these stories came from quite a while ago. Like this one was one when I first had what I call intuitive opening. It was like 2006, I think. I can't. The dates are all a little confused now that I try and backtrack it, but this was one of my first experiences with a guide coming in, and that was, I received these little essays in writing with this guide, and that was one of those very first ones. I'd forgotten that. So that's been around a long time. Interesting.
I wanted to ask you what came up for you as you were reading that, and then when you got to the exercise and you asked, you talked about asking for your heart to open. I just felt like maybe we could do, since you are an intuitive and you do these workshops, could we do a little exercise where everyone who wants to could, we could all work together and ask for our hearts to open?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I really appreciate what you said, Marie, about, people having different experiences growing up. A lot of people come to adulthood with a lot of pain. And in some of the teachings that I've received in meditation, they talk about this idea of the heart opening in progressive stages. There's 4 openings. It's pain is the first place we are, and then compassion is the next sort of opening, and then connection, where we all understand that we're all one, and then finally love, which is, a place maybe we can dip into quite a bit, but maybe we can't stay there all the time, that just full-on open heart of love. So we could have everyone just kind of close their eyes, and I'll just do a little meditation, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please.
Okay.
If you're driving, though, please keep your eyes open.
Right. If you're driving, just listen. Yeah, just listen with your ears. Don't go into the etheric realm with us all right now. So let's just go ahead and close our eyes or keep them open, and take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And in through the nose and out through the mouth. And even though we sometimes think that meditation is hard to get to, it's this layer or level of consciousness, it's actually very simple. We're just sort of hopping into a different river. We're sort of in one river, and then we walk across the beach and we hop into a different river, and it's this place where we feel very relaxed. We feel very comfortable. Our bodies seem to descend into a new place. And right now I just want you to sort of focus on the torso of your body. And some of you are going to notice that your body's pretty padded up with sort of like armor. It might be energetic armor, might be physical armor such as weight. Sometimes that happens too. And we're just going to very gently imagine that there's a tiny little piece of light that's going to rest on your skin right above your heart. And it is going to very, very gently begin to burrow down with absolute beauty and joy, right down into the place where your heart resides. Not your physical heart, but sometimes people call it the Ananda Kanda, the emotional heart, or the heart within the heart. And this little piece of light is going to find that place where your inner heart resides. Some of you are going to notice that there's like a little box there, a little rusty box, and your heart's sort of stuck in it. And the light's going to just sink right in and sort of loosen that up. So that before you know it, there's a sliver of light now coming in through all this padding and armor on your chest, into your skin layer, into your emotional heart. And you're going to notice that your heart is starting to expand a little as the light comes. And first, you're going to notice all the pain in your heart. You're going to just allow that to be. But you're also going to expand your heart further than that. You're going to open it further, so that the pain doesn't become the thing that you're thinking about or feeling all the time. You're in a new experience, and this is compassion. Compassion for everyone on the planet, all their suffering, but also compassion for yourself as a person who has been through so much. Allowing yourself to have this beautiful compassion for yourself, too. And then we're going to open and expand the heart further with this light coming in. We're going to go into connection. And at this time, you're going to realize that you are soul being. Body is just a container for this lifetime. All of us souls are not separate. We are one collective, one, all one, no separation. And just begin to sense this possibility of connection. Sense the great comfort that comes from knowing we are all one, not as a concept, but as the true reality. And then with a deep breath, I want you to just expand your heart right outside your body into the feeling of love, bliss, joy, gratitude, contentment. And just feel this feeling for a moment even, letting go of all the rest, opening into the fullest expansion. And just some of you might have your body swaying, you might have some other physical reactions, you might cry. You're just going to open into this feeling of absolute love that is the truth of all the universe. Elevated feeling, something we want to be in all the time, but maybe we can only manage a little bit. But right now, you're going to go to that place. The more you go there, the more it becomes your reality. And then with these open hearts, these beautiful open hearts, we're just going to see how long we can keep it going, opening into heart of love. And I want you to just stay in this space as long as you're able. Maybe some of you, you'll never come back to the regular way. Some of you will manage for 10 minutes. Some of you will manage for a minute. Just go there and see what you can do. And then we're just going to come right back into our bodies with these open hearts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you are back in regular reality except for your heart is fully expanded.
Thank you, Sara.
I like that. I always, I just go into this bliss state when I enjoy that. But it's just that simple, these 4 passages. Keep remembering, like in any given moment, you can pain, compassion, connection, love, just open, 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 open. And it's amazing how life begins to shift as that perception begins to shift.
I just want to say, if you are just tuning in or you want to go back, the beauty of the show is that it's on podcast. So you can go to spiritualshow.com and then you can download the podcast of the video and listen to, or podcast of the show and listen to that meditation as often as you like. So thank you so much, Sara, for that. That was just beautiful.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you actually about authenticity. Now it's time for a break, so I'm just going to lead up to this so you can have some time to think about it when we go to the break. Because you had mentioned in the book about authenticity is wherever you're at, which I totally resonate with because I was looking at there was a guest I was supposed to have on, and I may have her on in the future, but I was doing a little quiz on authenticity and it was kind of like, well, if you're not wealthy and you're not having everything that you want in the world, then you're not authentic. And I call BS on that because nobody's ever, even if you're wealthy and have your soulmate and everything, I mean, there's always more that we want on this physical plane and more growth to be had. So I would just like to hear more about your views on authenticity, but it's time for a break. So we'll be right back. Okay. So we are speaking with Sara Wiseman. She is the author of Living a Life of Gratitude, Your Journey to Grace, Joy, and Healing. This is Synchronicity, talk radio for your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Marie Benard, and like I said a moment ago, you can go to my website, spiritualshow.com or mariebenard.com. It will take you to the same place, and you can download the podcast if you want to listen to that wonderful meditation that Sara just provided for us. So we'll be back with more Synchronicity momentarily. Welcome back to Synchronicity, talk radio for your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Marie Benard, and we are speaking with Sara Wiseman, author of Living a Life of Gratitude, Your Journey to Grace, Joy, and Healing. And you can find her at sarawiseman.com, and Sara is S-A-R-A, Wiseman.com. Welcome back to the show, Sara.
Thanks so much.
Hey. So, I wanted to talk about authenticity and what that means to you.
I think that a lot of people struggle to find their authenticity because they are pretty busy listening to what media or the world or their family or, all the different pressures we have, even schools providing this image of who they are, who they should be. And in reality, we're very original, quirky beings. We're not here. We didn't come on this planet to be the same as each other. We came to have our own gifts and talents and ways of thinking about things. So I think being authentic is about being your quirky, amazing, weird, different self at the biggest level you can.
And so, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, you had mentioned before the break this idea of, this idea of manifesting this really abundant life. And I think that's great, but I don't think it's the point. In the stuff that I receive, and when I keep saying receiving, I do meditation, and then I get written teachings arriving to me, is where most of my information arrives from. But it's we're not meant to be perfect. We're not meant to have perfect lives. We're meant to grow and develop as souls. So this idea of, if your life looks perfect on paper, then you're authentic, that doesn't actually make any sense to me at all. I would say that you might be very original and very authentic and very true to yourself, and your life might look, not that great on paper, and you might be having the best life ever, much better than the person who seems to have it all together.
Thank you, Sara. And there's actually an exercise in your book of being thankful for some of the struggles and things that you've had, because you even write about how these things, you might fall off track, or there's a story about a kid who was having a lot of trouble with high school, and then she was 18 years old and on paper looked like her life was a complete mess. And yet you were able to work with her, and she was able to see what her next step was. And just because it didn't fit in with the path that we're told we're supposed to fit into, it doesn't mean that it's not good or authentic.
Yeah. And even just things so I have a son who's 18, and he has to make a decision about where he's going to go to school next year. And so he goes to this where we live, it's pretty rural. There's not a whole lot of options for high school. And he goes to this very conservative place. And that's okay. It's a good, education on paper. Looks really good on paper. But my son is actually really, really fascinated and intrigued and passionate about modern dance. He wants to be a choreographer. And so it's really interesting to see how, we're just totally be yourself, go get it, whatever it is. But to see how this view of allowing yourself to be yourself, at the school, where there's a lot of football and very conservative ways of being, and it's no, he would be miserable to do anything regular or normal. He's called to be what he's put on the earth for. And I think that a lot of people sort of make the mistake of, taking the safe job or the safe career or the safe path when they've got this part of them that is their sole purpose, why they're here, to be expressed.
Thank you, Sara. And that brings up a question for me. Do you work with people privately on finding their soul purpose? Because there's so much noise that can really block our ability. Like we say, oh, well, I'd like to do this, but I'd never make any money. I don't know. I'd like to do that, but, I have a mortgage to pay. So do you work with people on that?
Yeah, I work with people privately all the time. It's all kind of on my website, sarawiseman.com. But then also, like the Daily Om, I create a lot of courses for them. And what I find is that one of the main tools of intuition, the way that I use it, is that intuition allows you to access like your true path. It allows you to sort of be guided by the universe as to where you're supposed to be going. And of course, as you know, like the synchronicities that show up to kind of keep you guided. So, for example, for my son, he was sort of doing, I guess, martial arts, and we ended up going. This is a couple years ago. We went to this art fair, and it was kind of like nobody wanted to go, but we just decided we would go. And that's where we met the professor of dance who invited my son to come to this workshop. And then in going to that workshop, that's where he was invited to perform with them regularly. So the universe saying, you better get to that art show because there's the next little piece for you. We're busy guiding you, so don't forget to follow along the synchronicities and just keep following, and you will be led exactly where you're supposed to be.
Can you tell me more about that, how nobody wanted to go, but there were synchronicities guiding you?
Yeah, let's see. I don't remember that particular thing that much, but I'll tell you another one. So I just had a workshop in Portland, Saturday, and I had people so we're in a workshop, so I didn't want people to like just wander out in Portland to do this exercise. So we used some things like some visualization decks and some cards. And one of the pieces I used was I have this really old collection of postcards from my parents had traveled in Europe a lot. And so these old cards from the 60s and 70s. And so I passed out postcards at random to each person in the group. And then they were just supposed to like write about what came up for them. And this one woman, Bonnie, she received the card of the Matterhorn in Switzerland, and she's like, Sara, this makes no sense to me. I don't have anything to write about it. I don't resonate with it. I guess I'm not into it. This part of the exercise didn't work for me. And I go, okay, well, just sit with it. You never know. Maybe something will come up for you the next day or so. And then she wrote me yesterday, and she said, I can't believe this. That Matterhorn postcard meant nothing to me. And then I came home, and for some reason, I turned on public television. She said, I usually never turn it on unless I've got a specific thing I'm going to watch. She goes, I was just compelled to turn it on. And there was this weird program about ice climbing. And she was like, I just didn't know why. I just knew I was supposed to watch it. And she said, and then within a couple minutes, that entire image on the postcard came on the screen. It was like at the Matterhorn. And she just sat there transfixed, and the whole program was about this ice climber and the idea of, putting one foot in front of the other and then you can, get to your dream or whatever you're trying to accomplish. And she said that it was the absolute message that she absolutely had to hear. And it's interesting, without the postcard, she wouldn't have known that message was for her. The universe just came right down into, the television and showed her what she needed to hear in that moment. It's pretty cool.
Wow. Okay, great. Thank you. I love examples. It's really helpful. Yes. And with regards to authenticity as well, there's a story in your book about this girl in elementary school who was very athletic and a great biker, and you really admired her, and then you realized, but can you tell that story? Do you remember?
Yeah, that's great. So there was this woman, a girl that I went to school with. Her name was Annika, and she was sort of this turbocharged athlete. She was amazing. Everything was simple for her athletically. And at my house, I grew up in Seattle, so just below Vancouver. By my house, we had this enormous hill that then turned down to another hill. And so mostly when I was little, I would ride my bike in the alley, which was flat and safe and no cars. But when this girl came over to play, she always wanted to ride down the hill. And, I could barely ride down the hill. And she wanted to ride down the hill with no hands, right? She just got on her bike, no hands, flew down the hill, and probably would have gone down to the bottom of the other one, if I hadn't been screaming, look out, you're going to die, be careful. And, there was a lot of pressure, I think, for me as a kid, wanting to be able to do that too. And what I realized is that I loved this friend. I loved that she could do it, but for me, I couldn't do that. My best thing was to be in my room, sort of quietly writing with books. I wasn't a down the hill with no hands type of person, and I'm still not. I'm still quietly in rooms with books writing. And she's probably on the Olympic team somewhere. We're just each authentic to our own particular personalities and skill sets. Just how we are.
Well, and it's nice that you were able to recognize that at such a young age, because, or maybe it was more in hindsight, but because we do tend to compare ourselves to other people so often, and it can really throw us off of our path.
Yeah, I do think it's in hindsight. I think probably then I might have, felt kind of bad about my inability to be, at that level. There's so much, too, culturally now, especially, it's for men, too, but especially for women, about body size and what we look like. And it's very complicated. And the reality is that genetically, our bodies are really pretty different. Bodies are all shapes and sizes, and we have different hair colors and different skin colors. And this idea that, there's one way to look is pretty incorrect. And I think when we look at people who are really authentic in their bodies, they have this amazing beauty to them that has nothing to do with what we see in the magazines or what is supposed to be beautiful.
I love that we're talking about this, because actually last week I posted on Facebook about something very similar when I was a kid in foster care. I was looking through I found some old photos over the weekend, and they were from when I was 10, 11, 12, 14, and I had been told that I was fat and ugly and all of these things. And I looked at myself in these pictures, and I wasn't.
Right.
I wasn't at all.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. I mean, that experience too. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember there was a time when I was 10 years old, and I was 110 pounds when I was 10, but I was probably about 5'3". And my foster parents were looking through this book that said 10-year-olds should weigh, 80 pounds or something, but there was nothing about height. And they're like, oh, you're so overweight. And then they said, oh, well, they were telling me a story about this 1,100 pound person that had to have the roof removed and airlifted out of their house. They were so fat.
My gosh.
And they said, oh, and guess how much that person weighed when they were 10 years old? 110 pounds. Maybe you'll be that fat when you grow up. And needless to say, that hugely traumatized me. And I spent so many years thinking I was fat and ugly. And I was told for years and years how fat and ugly I was. And I actually did end up quite overweight because I believed myself to be this fat person. And now I'm looking back and it's like, well, I wasn't a skinny little pixie ballerina, but I was not by any means anywhere near overweight. So it's just like so amazing that you can carry this view of yourself for decades. And then you look back and it's like, that was never even close to accurate.
Well, and it feels to me that the way that people understood how to be with each other even several decades ago or several generations ago was really messed up. I think we're only just starting to come out of these like huge cycles of hidden abuse in families. We're just barely becoming conscious, like that, no, that's not okay or that can't be allowed. And so it's kind of like our generation or our generations are the ones who are kind of correcting all of that. And it's very sad that we can't correct the past, but we can begin to support the future and say that that's not how we are as human beings.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time that we're living in. We have a lot of choice now.
Well, and there's also like this value of, like say you have a lot of emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse in your past, and you decide, you make conscious choice, like maybe in generations past you're just saying, I'm not talking about you, Marie, just for anybody listening, just say your mother's or your father's generation also had abuse, and then going back, it was just like really in the family karma. And then you can be the person to say, you know, this ends with me, even though I was abused in whatever, all the many ways, you know, it ends with me. And then to begin to connect to other people who are saying the same thing and really beginning to shift these generations forward is pretty powerful thing to do. And kind of like the value of who you attract into your life when you consciously decide, I was a victim, but no more. I was in family of abusers, but not going to do that anymore. And you begin to attract people who are like supportive and loving and healthy, and then you can just really grow and blossom and flourish as maybe, you know, you weren't able to when you were younger in these safe settings.
I'm just curious, and I know we're on the topic of gratitude, and I'm kind of getting off track. But it's sort of
it's all good.
My life is like the show is sort of like my growth and my life, and I try to use it as an illustration because I know that if I'm having this problem, there's someone out there listening who also is.
Definitely.
And so one of the things in the book, you do have an exercise about connecting to that gratitude of those things. And when I'm doing well, I can be very grateful for all the crap I had to put up with because I know that it's made me into the person that I am today, which is a great person. But then there are times when we can wallow in, oh, I was abused and oh, life is so hard and da 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 da. So I'm just wondering, as an intuitive and a coach and all of that, do you have any advice for people on how they can consistently find the gratitude in that?
Well, I think part of it is as you grow and get older, a lot of this stuff, even the really horrendous stuff of the past, just kind of begins to drop away as you're like moving into, like, you consciously decide, that's not my life anymore, I'm going to have a different life. And then you sort of begin to experience like happiness and support and love. And a lot of the past just starts to it's not you anymore. You don't identify with that anymore. And during the I guess during the interim stage where you're like healing and moving into the new life and letting go of the old life, and that might take, I don't know, decades, where you're getting better, all the time, but there's still these last big chunks or pieces to work on. I think the idea is like I don't like this idea of this forced happiness or like forced positivity. That's not to me what gratitude is about at all. It's really more just kind of being able to go into present moment and look at not what was in the past or even what's in the future, but just kind of what's here right in this minute. Like right in this minute I have a water bottle full of really cold, fresh water in case my throat gets tickly while we're talking. And it's just like, this is the best water. It's just dumb, but that's just these little noticings of like, man, that's good water. Or, oh, my little area here is really cool. That's just really great. And just these little moments of noticing.
Thank you.
It doesn't really solve the past stuff. But again, it's sort of like that meditation. The more you hook into love and opening, the more you leave behind the experiences that you had.
So it sounds like you're really, in talking about opening, also being like in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really all it comes down to. At a certain point, you start to get into this consciousness level and awareness level where it's pretty much makes up the bulk of your day. And I'm not there all the time by any means, but I do find as I've been doing all these practices for so long now, it's where I am more and more. I'm in this place of peace and just kind of appreciation more and more. And then dipping back into chaos and, distraction and whatever, but then always having a way to go back into that peaceful, grateful place. Like once you know how to go in through that door, you can kind of always go in there, and the more you go in there, the more you stay in there.
Thank you, Sara. Well, we have about 10 or 12 minutes before we start wrapping up the show. And I know that there is the potential to talk about the overabundance for the holidays, but I'm just wondering, Sara, where you would like to take this for the next 10 minutes.
I think, I think just following on this discussion that we're having now, so I would say that of folks who come to me, I would say that over half were abused in some way as kids. And mostly, lots of times I work with women, primarily. But so there is this sense of how do you get through the stuff that, like, maybe you can't even talk about very well, or how do you get through these, like in your experience, it sounds like you had compounding, problems of being so abused by multiple people, like at different times. And so how do you get through that? And I think it takes a great deal of decision that that's what you want to do. And it's a pretty intense process, but I believe that it can be, you can get to a point where like that past doesn't even seem like it's you anymore, It doesn't even resonate with you. It's like it's so far in the distance emotionally after you get through this passage of healing. So I'd like to just kind of open that to people that it's possible and it can be done. And to me, the best way is to go in and get this, I call it direct connection with the divine. And you really just go into meditation or prayer, you walk in nature, and you just connect into universe and guides, and you just connect in and ask for assistance. And this begins this kind of relationship that you can go back to all the time. If you're ever in trouble, you just go into direct connection with the divine. And there's an extraordinary amount of healing from these guides and these other entities and these angelic form that the moment we make connection, it's like they've been waiting for us this whole time, and they actually come in and shift things in our bodies and in our hearts and in our heads. So that would be what I would suggest to people who aren't sure how to get there. That's the first step.
Thank you, Sara. That brings up another question. Actually, I was having an email discussion with a girlfriend a couple weeks ago about we're kind of like personal growth junkies. And so we learn all this stuff and everything. But then there seems to be blocks like the meditation, present moment. I mean, it seems to be pretty much the most basic part of personal growth. And yet so many of us have this resistance to meditation, even though we know that it's helpful. And in the moments when we have meditated, we see that it is beneficial. So what do you say for people who are kind of resistant to that? What can they do to soften that?
Well, some people are better at meditating in the body, like doing ecstatic dance or something along those lines, or walking, doing a walking meditation, some people just really have trouble sitting. And so that's fine. So if you're one of those, physicality people, go do your meditating in ecstatic dance or walking or running or, rock climbing, whatever it is, nature. But the way you would do that is you'd go to, say, rock climbing, and you would set intention, like, okay, I'm going to be doing rock climbing. My mind's going to be kind of focused on what I'm doing because it's maybe technical. But I'm also going to kind of hold these questions like, how can I let go of the past? Or how can I heal from the past? And I'm going to, put those in my mind before my trip. And I'm going to just allow everything that arrives during my experience, the synchronicities, the noticings, to just inform me. So that's one way, to just set intention and then go do this physicality thing. And then the other way is, so here at where I am, we have this room downstairs that has these really cool meditation pillows to sit on, and the room's basically usually free, nobody's in there, so it's private, and it's perfect, right? And so I have to force myself to go down there because I know when I sit and I'm still and I begin to breathe, a lot of emotions are going to come up. Even for, I think that I've spent all these years clearing and clearing and clearing, but every time you sit and become still, the first thing that happens is probably a lot of emotions going to come up. And you got to just kind of surf your way through that and be with it and be with what comes up and allow it. And that is actually the only way to get through, is just to sit with it, be with it, allow it, let it pass through you. And at beginning meditation practice, that's usually what's going to happen for most people. All their stuff's going to come up right then. Just let it be, let it happen, move through it.
Thank you. And that brings up another question for me. What if there's how can you create that space for yourself if, say, where you live or what you have access to, maybe you don't feel like you have access to the most peaceful area, or you live in a tiny apartment or something like that. Is there a way to create that sacred space for anyone?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of use for people, if they create a tiny little, even if it's just a little corner of a bookshelf, and that is sort of an altar or a place of intention, and they might put, a picture of something or some things that they're working on, at the moment. They might put those sort of out there. The other way is, if you have a roommate, if you're sharing a bed with someone, that's actually probably the most challenging. But if you have your own bed, I think it's really great practice to just set the alarm a little bit early. The alarm goes off, you just sort of sit up in your bed and you have some time connecting in with the divine. And then you also do that same, like right before you go to sleep. If you're with somebody in the bed, then I don't know, it's not as easy. Or if you have a roommate, just trying to carve out that little bit of 10 minutes of alone time, in the morning and in the evening will start to make a difference. So many distractions, I mean, you kind of have the choice, like, am I going to be on computer or whatever I'm on in the evening and then just stumble into bed, or am I going to turn it off 10 minutes early and take that time, like, for my own processing? The media can get in the way a lot, especially now. It's such a distractant.
Yeah, I know the feeling, and also it helps for you to sleep better if you don't have the computer or the TV or your smartphone on before bed, because just the light from it is actually it triggers your biological. Yeah, the sleep.
And your in fact, your energetic field, it also kind of disrupts. So good to get disconnected from that stuff as you can. And then, the last thing is nature. Even if you're not in a place where it's naturey, there are little surprising bits of nature everywhere, even in cities. So just to look for that, or like Vancouver, by the water. Water's a wonderful way to have some moments to yourself, just watching it.
Thank you for being on the show. Your book is Living a Life of Gratitude, Your Journey to Grace, Joy, and Healing. And I'm wondering if there's anything, the most important thing you want people to take home, or one last thing that you want to say before we wrap up.
Yeah, I think, so this is my 6th book, so there's quite a bit of other teachings that folks will find, but probably the easiest way to find me or become familiar with my work is on dailyom.com, which is very well known. I have a bunch of courses, and they're all priced just $1, so that even if it's a sliding scale, so if you're on a budget, you want to kind of tap into some of the things that I've been talking about, check that out. It's really, really fantastic service. And then folks can find me at sarawiseman.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sara, for being on the show. I'm so glad. I feel like this was a synchronicity, that it all just fell together, because I needed this conversation, and I know there are people out there who didn't. While I was reading your book, I was struggling with the whole gratitude thing because of things I've been going through lately, and I was like, where's this conversation going to go? And I just feel like it unfolded so beautifully. So thank you so much for your presence and for the work that you do in the world.
Oh, it's great. It was really nice to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sara. Okay, well, have a great week.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
So that was Sara Wiseman, Living a Life of Gratitude, Your Journey to Grace, Joy, and Healing. And you can find her courses on a sliding scale on Daily Om, as well as her website, sarawiseman.com. And you can find my website and the podcast of this show, spiritualshow.com, or you can find the podcast at citr.ca as well. And I will put up a link to her website on my site, spiritualshow.com. And coming up in just a couple of minutes here on CITR is Parts Unknown with DJ Chris Horrific. So stick around for that. And if you are a local musician and you have some beautiful music, please do feel free to send it my way so I can add it to the show. I just want to send you so much love. Be well. Have a wonderful week. Namaste.